2020 has been a remarkable year for global events unfolding at seeming breakneck speed. From the targeted killing of Iran's General Soleimani to the tragic shoot-down of a plane filled with Canadian citizens, to fears of a global pandemic and its economic impact on markets and trade.
We have already seen global economic and supply chain disruption.
There are very real potential challenges.
By being clear, we get a behavioral response that cushions the economy before the coronavirus effect arrives.
And it's important that Canada be prepared for the effects beyond those of health.
We are currently engaged in a gray zone conflict with Russia that they are largely winning. The war is on.
Joining me now is Fred Kagan of the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you for joining us, Fred.
It's great to be with you.
You know, we've been talking about a lot of global issues, Russia, Iran, China, all in the headlines, people looking at COVID-19 right now. You're an expert in critical threats. What do you believe the single biggest global threat is right now that keeps you awake at night?
The single biggest global threat is the erosion and possible collapse of the rules-based international order that is being fueled by a lot of different malign actors, but that poses an incredible danger to countries like the United States and Canada that benefit from that order more than any others.
You were just here in Ottawa late last week. We shared a stage together, and we were talking about Russia. And during that, you said that essentially we are at war as the West, including Canada, with Russia, whether we know it or not. I think that's a statement that would surprise a lot of our viewers at home. So what do you mean by we're at war with Russia?
The Russians are pursuing a set of deliberate operations in Ukraine, throughout Europe, in the Middle East, in North Africa, and elsewhere to advance Putin's desires, Putin's goals, which are antithetical to our security requirements. And he's using military force to do that. He's using diplomatic force and financial pressure and other things. And we are not really recognizing how cohesive is his plan, how cohesive are these operations, and how they are actually all moving toward a single objective. And we tend to be a bit too focused, in my opinion, on the risk of conventional conflict with Russia and how we need to prepare for war with Russia, and we do, but we are not really seeing that he's actually achieving his objectives without having to use conventional warfare in the current environment.
So how is that threat manifesting then? Is it in terms of fake news? Is it information operations? Is it attacks on elections? How is this sort of existential war playing out?
Well, it's all of those things, but it is also military operations. He invaded Georgia in 2008. He invaded and seized and annexed Crimea in 2014. He invaded Donbass in eastern Ukraine in 2014. He has put forces in Syria. He's now got forces in Libya. So there's a military component to this, which is significant. But then, of course, it's also that those military undertakings are primarily aiming to support a general information operation that is designed to distract the West, disrupt our democracies, persuade us that we're wrong, that he's right, and just get us fighting amongst ourselves so that he can achieve his objectives without us resisting them.
So if you were able to sit down at a table with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and give him advice on how Canada should respond and what our role should be in all of this, what would you say to him?
I think Canada can play a really important role. This is not right now a conflict in which you can only play if you've got big conventional forces. There's a place for that. There are places where that's important. But this is a conflict where soft power really does matter. It matters to Putin how his information operations are perceived. It matters to him how the legality of his undertakings is perceived. And these are things that Canada can challenge as well or better than the United States or other countries. There's a big diplomatic effort here, calling things out, calling the Russians out, not giving in to their narratives. As an example, if I may, in Ukraine, the Russians are simultaneously a belligerent. They are fighting on the ground, and they are posing as a mediator as well in the Minsk talks, in the Minsk agreement and the Normandy format talks. We should not be allowing them to get away with that. That's something that Canada can help with, because that's about Canada saying, hey, you, Russia, you can't both be a belligerent and a mediator. So either stop fighting or get out of this mediator role. And that would be very valuable coming from Canada.
We don't have much time left, but I want to ask you about Iran, because it's something that you've also written about extensively in the wake of the targeted killing of General Soleimani, of course, what happened after that to the Canadians who were innocent on a plane shot down by the Iranians. That's all kind of gone quiet in the wake of COVID-19, but there are still many Canadian families who are hurting. What do you think Canada should be doing in terms of navigating that relationship with Iran?
Look, I think Canada and the rest of the West needs to understand that Iran is a threat to them. It is a threat to the West in general. It is a proliferation threat, both of nuclear proliferation, but also of terrorism, which it has conducted globally, and attempting to disrupt and achieve hegemony in the Middle East, which is not in Canada's interest or anyone else's. So we all need to craft together a way of keeping sustainable pressure on the Iranian regime in order to prevent it from pursuing its objectives and force it further and further down the road where it has to make a choice about whether it's going to keep being an oppressive regime seeking regional hegemony or whether it is going to choose another path. And that Canada needs to be involved in that discussion, and we need to find a way to reform a consensus policy that works for us and works for Canada and works for Europe.
Fred, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure to be with you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us. For the West Block, I'm Mercedes Stephenson.